Morning, everybody. Welcome to OCC. Why don't you stand with us? And to help prepare our hearts this morning, I'm going to read some scripture over us. This is from Psalm 33. It says, "The Lord merely spoke, and the heavens were created. He breathed the word, and all the stars were born. He assigned the sea its boundaries and locked the ocean in vast reservoirs. And so let the whole world fear the Lord, and let everyone stand in awe of him. For when he spoke, the world began. It appeared at his command." And so in response to that, we're going to sing the doxology together. And I'd love it if we could just fill the room with our voices. Who's up for it? All right. Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise him, all creatures here below. Praise him above, ye heavenly host. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. One more time. Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise him, all creatures here below. Praise him above, ye heavenly host. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Amen. We sing amen. We sing amen. One more time. We sing amen. Amen. So we're going to continue in worship as we sing a newer song together, and this speaks of how all creation and all generations praise our loving God. And so we're going to join in that this morning. Why don't you join us? Generations falling down in worship to sing the song of ages to the Lamb. And all who've gone before us and all who will believe will sing the song of ages to the Lamb. We sing, your name is highest, your name is the highest, your name is the greatest, your name stands above them all. And all thrones and dominions, all powers and positions, your name stands above them all. And the angels cry, holy, all creation cries. If you
Amen, church. That's good.
Sing, I cast my mind. I cast my mind to Calvary, where Jesus bled and died for me. And I see his wounds, his hands, his feet, my Savior on that cursed tree. His body bound and drenched in tears, they laid him down in Joseph's tomb, and the entrance sealed by heavy stone. Messiah still and all alone. Come on, we lift our voices together and praise him. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh Lord our God. Then on the third outbreak of dawn, the Son of Heaven rose again. Come on, and all trampled death. Oh, where is your sting? With the angels roar for Christ our King. Oh, and all praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh Lord our God. He shall return in robes of white. The blazing sun shall pierce the night, and I will rise among the saints, my gaze transfixed on Jesus' face. Come on, we sing. Oh, and all praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh Lord our God. And oh Lord our God. And oh Lord our God. Yeah. So, loving God, we celebrate you. We look to you. We thank you for your presence here with us. We thank you that you are pursuing after the entirety of our hearts. And so we give you more of our heart now in this moment. God, we love you. We thank you for your goodness and your grace new this morning. In your name, amen. Y'all can have a seat.
100 years ago, back in the early 1920s, a man named Wally Pipp played first base for the New York Yankees. Alongside the great Babe Ruth, in 1923, Wally Pipp helped lead the Yankees to their first World Series title. He remained a fixture in the Yankee lineup the next couple of seasons, but then on an early summer day in 1925, Wally Pipp was not able to take the field. Some legends suggest that he had a light headache that day. He requested the game off. Others remember him getting hit in the head by a line drive the day before and suffering a concussion and not being able to take the field. But either way, what's not in dispute is on June 2nd, 1925, Wally Pipp did not play first base for the Yankees. Taking his place in the lineup that day was a talented young up-and-comer by the name of Lou Gehrig. Now, as history would have it, Bill, you know, Wally Pipp would never play first base for the Yankees again. Gehrig would suit up for the next 2,130 straight games. That was a Major League Baseball record at the time, spanning from June 2nd, 1925 to May 2nd, 1939. All right, Lou Gehrig didn't take a day off for 14 years. Pipp never played first base again. Gehrig got the nickname the Iron Horse for showing up every day. He's now in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Wally Pipp is a footnote in baseball history. And even today, 97 years or so later, when an incumbent athlete, someone who's been playing for a while, gets hurt, is sick, has to take some time off, and a talented young up-and-comer takes their spot and never relinquishes it, the first athlete is said to have been Wally Pipp, which is not the legacy any ball player dreams of leaving, right? That your name becomes a verb for someone being replaced. So we've been looking for a few weeks now at the life of David. And after David defeats Goliath, King Saul grows increasingly nervous that he's going to become Wally Pipp. In fact, from David's victory in 1 Samuel chapter 17 onward, the book of 1 Samuel is about how God guides these two men in opposite directions. God is guiding Saul through his demise and the end of his reign, and God is guiding David through his rise, his ascension to the throne. And my job today is to take us from the moment that David defeated Goliath, we talked about that last week, to the minute David becomes king. And that's a pretty daunting task. You might assume David was already king. If you know a little bit of the story, but maybe not all of it, you might assume David was king, a young king when he defeated Goliath, or maybe that he became king shortly thereafter, but it was about another 15 years before David would take the mantle from Saul. And so today's sermon covers that 15-year span, approximately 16 chapters of the Bible, which if you call OCC home, you know is way more than we typically cover in a single sermon. And you would be fair to ask, like, why are we going to cover so much today? And I'll put it to you this way. If you've ever flown in a plane, you know, looking down upon the landscape, you see things from far up above that you might otherwise miss. And today we're going to see some things in David's life by taking this flyover view that if we were just taking a small portion of this story, we might miss. So I hope to cover David's transition. This is a really important transition in David's life. We're going to see some important good things that David did as he trusted God. But we're also going to see some parts of David's heart that might shed some light on our own. And I pray that it's going to be helpful for all of us, wherever we are in our faith journey, whether we feel close to God right now or we feel far from him, that there's some good things here to help us in our next step. So let's begin in 1 Samuel chapter 18, starting in verse 2. I want to read verse 2 and verse 5 to kind of set the scene. It says, "And Saul took him that day." All right, this is the day after, or the day of David's defeat of Goliath. "Saul took him that day, and he did not let him return to his father's house. And David went out and was successful wherever Saul sent him, so that Saul set him over the men of war. And this was good in the sight of all the people and also in the sight of Saul's servants." After defeating Goliath, Saul takes David into his cabinet, essentially. And while David's serving in the palace, David befriends Saul's eldest son, Jonathan. David marries Saul's daughter, Michal. The military men notice what a good young leader David is. They're very impressed. The servants take note of how David treats them. He treats them much better than Saul did. The people of Israel as a whole start noticing David seems to be successful in everything that he does. In fact, so successful, they actually write a song about it. 1 Samuel 18, verse 7 says, "As they danced, they sang, 'Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands.'" This man is 10 times the leader, 10 times the ruler, 10 times the warrior that our current king is. King Saul sees all of it. right? How could you miss it? He hears all of it. And as Saul's jealousy grows, David is forced to flee the palace. He has to leave behind his friend Jonathan. He leaves behind his wife Michal. He travels to a place called Gath, which is a Philistine community. These are the same people who had employed Goliath, so David would be an enemy of theirs. He thinks in enemy territory he might have some cover and some protection from Saul, but he knows he can only stay there as long as he's not considered a threat. So David pretends to be crazy. He foams at the mouth. He writes on door frames. He does the whole kind of charade. But the Philistines still, they eventually grow suspicious, and David is once again back on the run. Now, as he moves from place to place, David picks up a band of men who are loyal to him. In fact, 1 Samuel 23 tells us David has about 600 men who are following around with him. So it's a pretty good number. He's not alone. He's got some protection. The problem is, the Bible tells us Saul pursues with an army 5 times that size, 3,000 soldiers in Saul's army. And the end of chapter 23 offers us a helpful marker in the story, kind of a chronological marker and a geographical marker too. It says this in 1 Samuel 23:29, that David went up from there and he lived in the strongholds of En-Gedi. Now, I've talked about En-Gedi sometimes in the past. En-Gedi means spring of the wild goats. It is an oasis on the western shore of the sea, of the Dead Sea. If you go there, it's easy to see why it would be a great place to hide. There are rocks and crevices and caves. You could lay low for a long period of time. And there are multiple springs of fresh water, which means a fugitive like David, or even 600 fugitives, could stay hydrated for long periods of time, even as they hid out in the desert. And this is what the next verse says. The start of chapter 24. When Saul returned from following the Philistines, he was told, "Behold, David is in the wilderness of En-Gedi." Then Saul took 3,000 chosen men out of all Israel, and he went to seek David and his men in front of the wild goats' rocks. And he came to the sheepfolds by the way, where there was a cave, and Saul went in to relieve himself, which means exactly what it seems, to mean. This is a serious scene, but it's also slightly comical, as you'll see here in a moment. Now, David and his men were sitting in the innermost parts of the cave. So you don't have to be a pastor or a priest or have some kind of master's degree from theological school to maybe interpret this moment for you. You want to know God's will for your life? Well, when your enemy walks into your hiding place to do his business, that's pretty clear sign of what to do. Like, this is your opportunity to take his life. Like, no one around to protect him, no one to see what happens. No way word would leak out, pun intended. So David's men say, this is your golden opportunity. Don't flush it down the toilet, pun intended as well. I got a 4-month-old at home, so there's diapers up to my neck. And my 4-year-old thinks the funniest thing right now he can do is burp on purpose. So this is where my humor right now is. I apologize for that. But the text leads to it as well. So the men of David said, "Here is the day which the Lord said to you, behold, I will give your enemy into your hand, and you shall do to him as seems good to you." So they're saying, this is the moment you take his life. And so then David arose and stealthily, what did he do? He slit Saul's throat, grabbed him from behind and took him as a hostage and held him with ransom. No, it says he arose and he stealthily cut off a corner of Saul's robe. And afterwards, David's heart struck him. We'll come back and talk about that later, because he'd cut off a corner of Saul's robe. He said to his men, "The Lord forbid that I should do this thing to my Lord, the Lord's anointed, to put out my hand against him, seeing he is the Lord's anointed." So David persuaded his men with these words and did not permit them to attack Saul. They were we'll do it for you, they said, but he won't let them do it. And Saul rose up and left the cave and went on his way. David can't bring himself to kill the king or to let his men do so. And so when Saul finishes and he gets some distance from the cave, David steps out from behind. He shouts out to the king. He's like, "Long live the king. Please, Lord, do not listen to the lies your men are feeding you. I'm not out to take your life. I'm not out to usurp the throne. Like, you want proof? Here's proof." And he holds up to the corner of his robe that he had cut off. Like, it's a powerful moment. Saul's even convicted a bit here, at least a brief period of time. But Saul, he does continue to pursue David. And in fact, in chapter 26, a similar scene unfolds again. We've talked about chapter 24 in here before. We've not looked at chapter 26. In chapter 26, David's crew happens upon Saul as Saul and his bodyguards are asleep in their camp. Saul's spear is in the ground next to his head. And so David and a man named Abishai, one of David's right-hand men, sneak into the camp. Abishai grabs the spear, and he's like, let me do it. You say the word. I'm not going to strike him twice. All right, he won't suffer. I'm good at what I do. He's not going to suffer. No more running for you, no suffering for him. The kingdom becomes yours. All's going to be well. Just give me the command. I'll take his life. And David, again, he refuses a second time. And to prove the purity of his intentions, David, instead of letting Abishai kill him, he nabs the spear, he retreats a safe distance, and then he shouts out, waking up the entire camp. And he says, 1 Samuel 26, "Here is the king's spear. Let one of your young men come over and get it. The Lord rewards everyone for their righteousness and faithfulness. The Lord delivered you into my hands today, but I would not lay a hand on the Lord's anointed. As surely as I valued your life today, so may the Lord value my life and deliver me from all trouble." And then Saul said to David, again, Saul convicted here too, "May you be blessed, David, my son. You will do great things and surely triumph." So David went on his way, and Saul returned home. Now, from this point forward, David has relative peace, not from every corner, but at least from Saul's camp. There's relative peace between he and Saul. Saul, at the end of 1 Samuel, dies, not by the hand of David or his men. He dies in battle with the Philistines. When David hears about it, David tears his robes, which was a sign of that time of mourning. David writes a song of lament. He liked to write songs. We see a lot of them in the Old Testament book of Psalms. And so he writes one about Saul's life and his death. In the opening chapters of 2 Samuel, when David is actually crowned king, if you can believe it, David's first order of business is to find the people who offered Saul a proper burial and to honor them. He says, "Thank you for treating my predecessor with the respect he deserved." He honors them. That's the sweep of 1 Samuel 18 to 2 Samuel chapter 2. And David comes out looking pretty good of all that. Actually comes out looking really good as you kind of take that quick view. But I want to come back and I want to look at one part of the scripture that we passed over. And it's actually a part of the story that most times, I think, when we read or pastors preach through it, we preach over. I've never preached what we're going to cover here in a moment. I've never done it before. So I want to quickly just get some of the low-hanging fruit from David's life that we just studied, see some of the good things that David did, but then I want to take a little bit of a deeper look at what's going on in his heart and maybe see some of the darkness that's starting to grow there. So first, some of the good that we see in chapter 24 and 26. 3 quick hits, and then we're going to move forward. Number 1, when God makes a promise, you can trust he'll deliver. And when God makes a promise, you can trust that he'll deliver. David was identified as a future king way back in chapter 16. So 10 plus years, almost 15 years has passed by. By the time we get to chapter 24, his candidacy has only gained momentum as time has gone on. He's Lou Gehrig, Saul's Wally Pipp. Everybody knows that this is true. And so David, he has to be thinking in that cave, at least briefly, considering what it would mean to take Saul's life. This is God's plan. God told me I'm going to be king. I'm just speeding up God's will. It'd be wrong to strike the king, but so many right things could come from it. I don't need to rehearse this kind of reasoning, with you. Most of us understand what it's like to find ways to justify our actions. You ever have something that this is probably not what I need to be doing or should be doing, but we find a way to justify it? If I plagiarize this paper, I'll get the degree. I shouldn't plagiarize the paper, but I haven't had time to write it. I'm so close to the end, I'll get the degree, and then I can go on and do so many good things. Nobody's gonna know. If I fudge my resume or lie in the interview, I can get the job. I'm not quite qualified for it, but if I get the job, it's a perfect job for me. I would love it, I'd be so good at it. So I'll lie. My boyfriend or girlfriend, they're not a follower of Jesus, but I'm gonna marry them and convert them, kind of a missionary dating situation. So I'm gonna marry them and convert them and all's gonna be good. It's tempting to cut corners in hopes of fast-tracking God's plan for our lives. But David's story reminds us God's will can really only be realized in God's way. And so we see here, if you're a new believer or if you're a longtime believer, but if maybe you're new to faith or you're kind of exploring Christianity and Jesus and haven't been at church in a while, we see here that if God makes a promise, he's going to see it through. We can trust this. We can trust that his timing is always perfect. There's this temptation to take the reins from him. But even if we tried to control our future and work things out to the perfect end, like we find out that we're not able to do so. Our life's a mist. We're here one minute, gone the next, the scriptures tell us. And so when God makes a promise, trust that he'll deliver. David does this. Number two, pursuing the right end in the wrong way will weaken your ability to lead. David had nearly everyone in Israel on his side. And even those who were doing Saul's bidding had to know that the writing was on the wall, time was almost up. Had David taken Saul's life, he would have secured for himself what God had already promised, but he also would have lost the respect of the people that he led. David had gained so much momentum because he had a reputation for being loyal and brave and a man of character, but if he had given into the pressure of the moment, he would have thrown it all away. What this tells us is it doesn't matter how good the goal may be, if you compromise on what matters most to achieve it, you've set up everything else that follows on a flimsy foundation. Right. Stanley Hauerwas once observed this. I think this is pretty insightful to David's story and to our own lives. He said, impatience is a crucial sin that carries us into other sins. David's impatience nearly carries him to murder. For us, it might mean lying, fudging your resume, laundering money, living with someone before marriage, having an affair. Like all these actions, they promise pleasure, they promise good things in the moment. They only create more problems down the road. And so we do things, we learn here, we do things the right way. It honors the Lord. It's good for us. And then number three, then we're going to look at here what's going on in David's heart maybe during this time. Number three, when you're unsure about what to do, let the greatest commandments be your guide. Now, the greatest commandments, what are those? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and your strength. And then the second one is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. Those are the answers Jesus gave when asked, what are the greatest commandments? Those are the two responses he gave. Jesus named them the greatest commandments, but we find them in the Old Testament. That's where Jesus is pulling them from. So David knew these. David demonstrates his love for God by trusting in God's timing rather than his own and not trying to control the situation. We talked about that. David also showed a love of neighbor by treating Saul as he would like to be treated. Saul is God's anointed. If David kills Saul to step into his shoes, who stops the next person from, killing David to step into his shoes? Like you see that even in countries today, like people where there's just, assassination attempt after attempt for someone else to take leadership. And so when David says, I'm not going to strike the Lord's anointed, he's embodying the spirit of these greatest commandments, honoring God and God's man for the job for this moment, but also treating his neighbor, Saul, as he would like to be treated, loving him as he loves himself. And so this is some of the good we see in David's life. And there's certainly good that's happening here. But people like you and me, David, we are more complicated than this. We're more complicated than this. It's not just that we succeed or we fail. It's not just that we, are the good guy or the bad guy. It's not just that we do things for the right reason or the wrong reason. It's actually that it seems that success and failure, good and bad, pure and impure motives, they're all kind of weaved together at times at the same moment within our lives and within our story. And that's actually what we miss if we don't take this 30,000-foot flyover of David's life. We titled this series Flawed Hero because despite David's good qualities, for every success there seems to be a failure. David seems, having read 1 Samuel 24 and 26, it's really tempting to put him on a pedestal, right? Like he trusted God's promises. He did things the right way. He proved faithful and true. But I'm telling you, David's more complicated than that. In fact, in this season of transition, we start seeing some cracks in his armor, particularly in chapter 25. And so I want you to turn, I would invite you to turn to 1 Samuel 25, if you would. That's where we're going to end our time together this morning. And I'll tell you as you turn there, it bothered me for years that sandwiched between these very two similar stories, 1 Samuel 24 and 1 Samuel 26, the Bible included this seemingly unconnected tale about a man named Nabal. And anytime I would read through 1 Samuel, I'd always wonder, why this aside into David's personal life? You got these two stories that are the same thing about Saul pursuing him, then you got this personal aside. But the answer is, the story is not just an aside. 1 Samuel 25 is like the cream filling of the Oreo cookie that holds the wafers together. Without the cream filling, all you got is this external shell. You get part of the story. It's really not even always, maybe not even the best part. If you like the Oreo, if you like the wafers the best, well, we need to talk about that anyway. The cream filling is the key to the Oreo cookie. But 1 Samuel 25, it holds the whole thing together and helps us see what's going on here. So 24 and 26 gives us David at his best. But 1 Samuel 25 gives us a glimpse into the messiness that's starting to form in his heart, and maybe sometimes the messiness that happens in our heart. So I know we've covered a lot today already, but I'm going to ask you just to lean in here for a moment as we look at 25, as the storm clouds roll overhead. I was listening. I was like, is that rain? I don't have to water my new grass, which is good, so that's nice, but I hope you didn't drive your convertible here today and leave the 4 people or so left, and that might have been exactly why they left, too. 1 Samuel 25, I want to actually invite you to stand with me as we read this. We're going to read a few verses here of this story. We've kind of covered everything up to this point to get here, and so let's lean in and receive what God has for us. Now, Samuel died, and all Israel assembled and mourned for him, and they buried him in the house at Ramah. Then David rose and went down to the wilderness of Paran, and there was a man in Maon whose business was in Carmel. I'm just going to tell you right now, if you're a Bible scholar person, probably in Hebrew we should call this Carmel, but I grew up in Indianapolis and we have a Carmel there, and so my mouth can't say Carmel. It just always says Carmel, so that's how I'm going to pronounce it. No emails about that. The man was very rich. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. He was shearing his sheep in Carmel. Now, the name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife Abigail. The woman was discerning and beautiful, but the man was harsh and badly behaved. He was a Calebite. David heard in the wilderness that Nabal was shearing his sheep. So David sent 10 young men, and David said to the young men, "Go up to Carmel, and go to Nabal, and greet him in my name. And thus you shall greet him. Peace be to you, and peace be to your house, and peace be to all that you have. I hear that you have shearers. Now your shepherds have been with us, and we did them no harm, and they missed nothing all the time they were in Carmel. Ask your young men, and they will tell you. Therefore, let my young men find favor in your eyes, for we come on a feast day." It's like, we've been good to you. Would you be good to us? Please give whatever you have at your hand to your servants and to your son David. When David's young men came, they said all this to Nabal in the name of David, and then they waited. And Nabal answered David's servants, saying, "Who is David?" Again, everybody knows who David is. Who's David? Who is this son of Jesse? There are many servants these days who are breaking away from their masters. This guy's loyal to Saul. Right? This is not David's man. This is one of Saul's men. "Shall I take my bread and my water and my meat that I have killed for my shearers and give it to men who come from I do not know where?" So David's young men turned away and came back and told him all this. And David said to his men, David's ticked, all right? "Every man strap on his sword." And every man of them strapped on his sword. David also strapped on his sword, and about 400 men went up after David, while 200 remained with the baggage. But one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, "Behold, David sent messengers out of the wilderness to greet our master, and he railed at them. Yet the men were very good to us. We suffered no harm. We did not miss anything when we were in their fields as long as we were with them. They were a wall to us both by night and by day, all the while we were with them keeping the sheep. Now therefore know this and consider what you should do, for harm is determined against our master and against all his house." David is coming, right? This is the word of the Lord, amen? And you may have a seat. Abigail hears the news about what's going to happen to her husband. She springs to action. She pulls provisions together for David and his men. When she's prepared, she sets out to meet David. She cuts him off at the pass. When she sees the future king-to-be coming, she gets down off her donkey. She bows before him, and she says, "Please forgive my husband. Right? He knows not what he does. He can't even pick up his wet towels off the floor in the morning. Like, don't listen to what he says. Like, let these gifts serve as a peace offering between us and you. We recognize the good you did to our servants. Please receive this expression of gratitude. And would you, in your mercy, extend grace to our house in spite of my husband?" So she asked David for mercy. And then she says in verse 30, "When the Lord has done to my Lord according to all the good that he has spoken concerning you and has appointed you prince over Israel, when you become king, My Lord shall have no cause of grief or pangs of conscience for having shed blood without cause, or for my Lord working salvation for himself. So she's like, if you show us mercy, this is good for you too, because you're not going to have your conscience will be clean before the Lord if you show us mercy. And then it says, David said to Abigail, blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who sent you this day to meet me. Blessed be your discretion, and blessed be you who have kept me this day from blood guilt and from working salvation with my own hand. For as surely as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, who has restrained me from hurting you, unless you had hurried and come to meet me, truly by morning there had not been left to Nabal so much as one male. Then David received from her hand what she had brought him, and he said to her, go up in peace to your house. Abigail returns home. She tells her husband what was happening. David and 400 men were coming to take your life. He has either a heart attack or a stroke, and he dies. Scripture tells us he dies shortly thereafter. Any way you read the story, Nabal doesn't come out looking very good. Okay, he lives up to his name, the fool. Nabal means the fool. But even though this man was a fool, he didn't deserve to die. He didn't deserve to die. David's wrath stretches beyond what the circumstances call for. And we know this because 3 times the Bible tells us that David was spared from working salvation for himself, from being guilty of blood. Abigail warns him, tells him this will be a good thing for you. David, when he hears what she says, said, this is good, you saved me from blood guilt. And then when David hears that Nabal passes away, he says, blessed be the Lord who's avenged the insult I received at the hand of Nabal and has kept back his servant from wrongdoing. So 3 times the Bible tells us David would have done wrong by taking Nabal's life. And so here's what I want you to notice. This is really important, so please don't miss this. David twice restrained himself from striking Saul and claiming the kingship. Twice. But when a random fellow refuses to give him some muffins from his field, a few provisions so that they could have a feast, David was ready to take his life along with his entire family and all of his farm. The future king was coming for revenge. What he wouldn't do to Saul, he was going to do to one of Saul's supporters. Why? Because we are complicated people. Good and bad, success and failure, pure and impure motives, more often than we care to admit, are all kind of weaved together within our story. Let me ask you this. Have you ever put your best face on at work, especially during a really trying season, with a lot of challenges and a lot of stress? You handled yourself well, only to come home and take it out on your kids. Or if you don't have kids at home, to take it out on your roommate, take it out on a friend. Have you ever given your best to a customer, strive to meet all their needs, even though they're being unreasonable, bend over backwards to give them whatever they ask, and then your spouse asks you for one favor and you snap? Do you give your friends your best attention, even though sometimes you know deep down they take advantage of you, they're not always the best for you, but then the moment your loving parents ask to spend one weekend with you, you roll your eyes into disgust, act like it was the worst question they possibly could ask? Friend, it's not uncommon to give so much energy and attention to the big public thing in our life that we have little energy or attention to give to the private matters. We're so concerned with honoring God over here. Or if you're not sure yet you believe in God or in Jesus, like being successful over here in this thing that we really care about, that we run the risk of dishonoring him over here or not giving our best. Like we know we can't let our guard down where everyone else is watching, so we let it down where they're not. And this is what's happening here to David. And we see hints of it. We saw hints of it in chapter 24 and 26. Like David has to approach Saul in the cave with at least the thought of killing him. Otherwise, his response in verse 5 didn't make any sense. 1 Samuel 24:5. Afterward, David's heart struck him because he'd cut off a corner of Saul's robe. That word struck is the same Hebrew word talking about what God did to the earth with the great flood. It's judgment. He was struck. David's convicted in this moment for even the thought of letting the thought of killing the king cross his mind. He refrains that time and another. But in between these two public successes, we get a glimpse of what's going on in David's inner world. He's been in a high-pressure environment for so long that he's exhausted. He's guarded his life for 15 years. In the process, he's grown lazy in guarding his heart. And if not for the grace of Abigail stepping into his path, David would have done the one thing that he tried so hard not to do, and that is to take matters into his own hands, to play God. 3 times the Bible tells us that's almost what David did. We often recognize that the small stuff of life is training ground for the big stuff, that if we don't handle the seemingly insignificant matters, then we may not ever be able to handle the more important matters. But sometimes we forget that as we reach positions of larger responsibility and greater stress and higher demands, we can easily lose sight of what got us there. And all of a sudden, the things that we never wanted to do, those are the things that we do. And the person we never wanted to become, well, that's the person that we become. So the implications earlier, the good things that David did, those things are all still true. But based on chapter 25, we just need to ask ourselves quickly a few questions. Otherwise, in the midst of our success and faithfulness, we might actually be bit by what almost bit David. And so very quickly, question number 1, are there areas of small compromise creeping into your life? If you're not guarding your heart, it's the small areas that are going to prove your undoing. It's not the big thing where you're giving your energy and your attention. Like that's where you're putting all of your effort towards. It's going to happen in something else. The Bible says our enemy, the devil, roams around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. So if Satan's going to take someone down, it's rarely going to be with the obvious. He's going to trip you up with the subtle. A flirtatious relationship at work, a little pornography when you're stressed, a few too many drinks after closing the deal. Doesn't matter if you're a longtime follower of Jesus or brand new to the church, we can reach this point we're focusing so hard over here, we miss the thing right in front of our face, and that's what we end up tripping over. And so are there small areas of compromise that are starting to creep in? That leads us to the second question. Are you listening to the truth tellers in your life? Sometimes other people see the compromises creeping in before we do. And so if you have people in your life who tell you hard things that you don't always want to hear, listen to me, that is a grace to you. Embrace those people. Embrace the person who says, I heard you snap at your colleague. That doesn't sound like it's coming from a healthy place. Like, what's going on inside? You need to apologize to them, but let's talk about what's going on. Embrace the person who says, you're not speaking very glowingly about your spouse. You used to talk about them glowingly. You had nice things to say. You sound much more cynical, much more down right now. Like, what's going on? Do you have something that you need to talk about or confess? Embrace the person who says, hey, listen, the way you're acting online, the way you've gotten swept up in some of the politics and the polarization, like those things are important, but it may have too strong of a grip upon you. Embrace the person who says, I know what you're getting into with your friends. I know that's not going down a good road. I'm worried about you and decisions that you're making. Embrace the person who says, like the gossip and games that I'm hearing around in the office or the place of work, like that's not how mature people handle themselves. Embrace the person who says, listen, online church is great, glad to have you with us online or on TV, but I'm afraid your isolation from the body is leaving you vulnerable. Like that's a grace if you got people who will say hard things that you don't always want to hear. David spares Saul because he had chosen to trust God with his future, but David almost killed Nabal because he couldn't overlook an offense in the present. And Abigail saved him. In chapter 25, it's not David who functions as a type of Christ. We've said David's kind of this preview of Jesus, like Jesus is called the son of David. He's kind of a forebearer of some of what Jesus will do. Well, in chapter 25, it's not David, it's Abigail. She's the one who steps in and offers the sacrifice, the peace offering that saves David from sin, which leads us to the third and final question, and we'll close. Are you aware God invites you to be vulnerable before him? The God of the universe invites you to come to him with all that's going on in your life. David comes out of this situation okay. It's not going to be the case later. David's tender heart is starting to toughen, and it's going to come back to bite him. He's soon going to make an awful relationship decision. He'll compound that sin with another. years of not paying his sons the attention they deserve is going to blow up in his face. Right? He's a flawed hero. Right? He's a complicated person. We're complicated people. You deal with high pressure and high stress. You've got tough relationships at home and at work. You feel the expectations of other people and yourself. Like, did you know you can bring it all to Jesus? You can bring all of that to him. It is okay to be vulnerable with God. Sometimes we get in this mindset, got to put on my strong face with God, but it's actually the opposite. He's the one person with whom you can take away the strong face and the facade, and you can just tell him, like, God, I'm hanging on by a thread here. I'm trying so hard over here in this area that it feels like everything else in my life is just a house of cards, and it is ready to collapse. You tell him, I'm complicated. I can't work through all the tangles of my heart. You bring it, you lay it all at the foot of the cross. You let Jesus deal with that. You let Jesus deal with that. He's the one, like Abigail, who steps into your path and he offers a sacrifice, except this time it's not bread and it's not provisions. He offers himself. The perfect Son of God offered in exchange for your flaws and your concerns, and it changes everything for us. Changes our entire life, our entire legacy. I mean, imagine how David's legacy would have been different if he'd not received the grace and truth that Abigail offered. And imagine how your life might be different, your legacy, if you receive the grace and truth that Jesus offers you. This is what David had said. David said to Abigail, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who sent you this day to meet me." Perhaps God sent this word today for you. He brought you here for a reason, to save you from a mistake, to save you from burnout, to save you from sin, to save your soul like you would trust him. The question is, will you receive his message? Let's pray together. God, we come together today as a church and we acknowledge, Lord, that maybe not in every moment, but certainly in some moments, we can be pretty complicated people. And for every success, there can be a failure, and there can be a mixture of motives. And we see this in David's life, and I'm really thankful, God, that you were honest with the struggles of the saints, and that even though David has a lot of good qualities that point to Jesus, he also has qualities that remind us of the need for Jesus. And we see both of these in this transitional season of his life. And so, God, I pray today as we've opened up your word and studied it, that you've maybe shined some light in places of our own heart. If there are things that we need to repent from, bring to you, if there are truth tellers we need to listen to, if there's a way you're calling us to move in and respond to you today, God, give us the courage and faith to do so. And thank you that you offer the opportunity. We pray these things in the holy, powerful name of Jesus, thankful for his grace. And all God's people said, amen. I invite you to stand for a time of response. And maybe today there's something that you need to be vulnerable with God about. Maybe it's for you. Maybe it's for someone else. I know sometimes when people come to pray, it's not for them. They're praying for someone else. But maybe for you today, if there's anything that you want to come and just lay before God in a moment of vulnerability, the altar is going to be open as we sing this song of response. I'm going to invite you to come. I'll be down here too. So if you come, you're not going to be by yourself. We're going to respond now in song. We're going to respond in prayer. We'll take the Lord's Supper after that. Next hour, we're actually celebrating 3 baptisms, but this hour we'll take the Lord's Supper together. And then after we take communion, we're actually going to have a pretty neat vision piece talking about a new mission work that we're going to be a part of. So I hope you'll be able to hang around with us until the end for that as well. But let's not rush through this time. If God's calling you to respond, however that might be, I encourage you to do so now as we sing.
hands to cheer and to guide. Strength for today, bright hope for tomorrow. Blessings all mine with 10,000 beside. Oh, great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. And all I have needed, thy hands have provided. Oh, great is thy faithfulness, Lord,
Even when we have not been faithful, God is faithful to us, and we can see that in 1,000 different ways in our life. But the way that is most important and most foundational to our faith is through the faithfulness of God sending his son Jesus on the cross. And Jesus did. He stepped in, and he took our flaws, and he gave us all the benefit through his perfect sacrifice. And so if you believe Jesus is the Son of God, he died on the cross for your sin, and he rose on the third day, we offer the opportunity to remember that each week through the bread and juice, pictures of the body and blood of Christ. And so I invite you, if you would like to partake, to take the bread and to break and to eat, and remember Jesus' body. Then to take the juice and to drink and remember Jesus' blood shed for the forgiveness of sin. If you would, go ahead and grab just a quick seat. Oftentimes we'll dismiss from here after a brief prayer, but I got an opportunity, or we have an opportunity to talk a little bit about some just mission and vision, what God calls us to as his followers this morning. One, you may have saw, well, before I even talk about what you may have saw coming in, one of the things that's important to us as a church is that we love our neighbors well. And that means certainly Owensboro and also just kind of surrounding areas, but in a global world, and we live in a global world now where we can know what's going on all the way across, we're even called to love those who aren't necessarily right next door. They may live overseas somewhere, and we're called to that in Scripture. It's not just because we have the internet. It's like God calls us to care about all nations and make disciples of all nations. And so it's really important to us as a church that we care both locally and globally for other people created in God's image. And so we have some missionaries who serve in Africa, East Africa, and you may have seen signs as you came in today talking about feeding East Africa. There's a huge famine going on right now and some other difficulties, and so coming up in a few weeks in October, we are going to have the opportunity, and we're going to try to pack 250,000 meals as a church and send them over to the region in which we serve and know some of what's going on. And so we're going to talk more about how you can be involved next week. But that's happening October 19th through the 23rd, and you can already go online and register through our app or through our website. So if you're a person who likes to just go and you want to already get that on your calendar, you're free to do that. We'll talk a little bit more about the details of how it'll all work next week. Today I actually want to talk about an opportunity coming up in England that is a new ministry, a new mission for us that's going to involve one of our own being sent to this new work. And so if you would, direct your attention to the screen. You're going to see a short video talking a little bit more about that. And then Shane and Mackenzie Robinson are going to come up and invite you to a vision night here this week.
My name is Shane Robinson, and this is my wife, Mackenzie.
And we've been married for 2 years. We actually met through high school ministry. And for me, in my mind, I was like, oh, I would never date a pastor. And now we're married. And now I'm knee-deep in high school ministry with him, and it's been a huge blessing.
I first received a call into ministry when I was in high school. Went to a summer camp in Michigan, and actually there felt like God was just tugging on my heart, and I wanted to work with students long term.
My heart for ministry, and specifically for missions, was first cultivated on a trip to Uganda a few years ago. So I'm a speech therapist by trade, and I had the opportunity to go to Uganda. During that time there, I was able to provide speech therapy services to a variety of children with disabilities. So we've been having home groups on Monday nights, and it's just a time for the students to come and have a safe place just to chill out and hang and relax and just dive deeper into relationship with each other.
That is a big part of kind of the ministry that we want to do in England. To do ministry and to plant a church, relationships are what needs to come first. And so we're really excited to just have a place there and to build relationships with people in the community. We're headed to Birmingham, England, and the reason for that is because there's actually 187 nationalities represented in that city. It's considered even beyond diverse to be super diverse, and 9 of the 10 most persecuted countries in the world have representation in Birmingham. And so we want to share the gospel, and we want to grow disciples who make disciples around the world. Only 3% of that population attend church at least twice a month. And so as the church has begun to decline and nationalities have come in as refugees and asylum-seeking communities, the city has a 22% Islamic background. 22% of the people claim Islam and are practicing that faith, while again, only 3% are practicing Christian faith.
So while we were there, we met a guy named Jeremy Deering. And so what started as something that is similar to our 3/3 groups that we do here at OCC, they launched a church planting site called Oikos. And so as they outgrew their home, they moved into a space that they now utilize as a cafe, and then they use it to run their church services on a Sunday.
What's really cool about Oikos is that the cafe that they run actually helps to create a sustainable model for ministry, so that they're able to fund the ministry they do in the community. So that's something that we hope to do as well. One of my goals is to create youth ministries at the churches within the collective. And so out of the 4, including our location, there's currently only 1 youth club functioning.
Our 3 main objectives is to reach, first, the unreached, so people groups who don't have access to the gospel, the unengaged, so people who are not plugged into a local church or claim to be evangelical Christians and are just not practicing the Christian faith, and then you. We covet your prayers, and we can't do any of this without prayer. And so we have a prayer group on Facebook, and if you'd like to get connected to our prayer group, just let us know. We would love to add you. A second way is financial giving. In order to get to the field, we have to be fully funded by May of next year in order to launch next August. And so we have our prayer cards with QR codes on them that we would love to hand out at the end of the service. And then the third way is short-term mission trips. So we would love for you all to come and see us and visit us in the field and see the ministry in action. Good morning, OCC. We are Shane and Mackenzie Robinson, and we are just so excited to be here this morning to share with you an opportunity on how you can learn more about our plans for Birmingham. So tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, we're going to be hosting a vision night for you all to come and learn more about a little bit about who we are, our hearts for Birmingham, and kind of what our vision is as far as ministry there. So tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, you'll come in entrance A over here to my right. We'll be in the student ministry room. And so during that time, we're gonna have a presentation to share with you all about what we're gonna be doing. And then we're also gonna follow with some tea and biscuits in good British fashion. And then we're also gonna end with some British trivia. So you can bring your family, childcare is gonna be provided, and we would love to have you there.
Absolutely. We hope to see you there. And I want to just say from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for the ways that you guys have already supported us. The church has done so much for us as we've kind of started out on this journey and this path. And actually through the missions department here, England was cultivated as part of the work that was going on in East Africa. And so as the church began and Andrew began to kind of trace back through the rest of the world where people from East Africa live, Birmingham became one of those places that was very obvious that people were kind of gravitating towards. And so then from there, the ministry that is needed became very evident with not just people from East Africa, but from all over the world and even England nationals. And so, yeah, I just want to say thank you because not only have I grown through the relationships that I've experienced here in this place over the last 5 years, but we together in cultivating our heart for missions, OCC has just been a huge part of that. And so as you guys kind of hear some of that, and maybe you're wondering more about why England, and we have been asked that question many times, and it's a great question. Tomorrow night we'll get to share even in more detail some exactly of why Birmingham, why England, why the UK, why are we doing this at this time in our lives. You know, all of those are really good questions that we would love to answer. And so, yeah, again, thank you for that. We'll hope that you'll come and join us and to hear more. At this time, we're going to go ahead and close out service. So if you would, go ahead and stand on your feet. I'm going to offer a prayer. And as you're kind of getting prepared and we're about to pray and close, I just want to let anyone in the room know who might be here for the first time. First of all, welcome and thank you for coming. So excited that you're here. There is a space out in the lobby called the Welcome Center. So it's on the left as you're walking out of the main doors here. And it's just a great place where Angie and her team that serve to connect you to the rest of the church would love to just kind of meet you and hear more about your story and maybe even share a small gift with you as well. And so if you would like to utilize that, it will be out there in the Welcome Center is out there in the lobby for just after service. So let's go ahead and pray. If you would bow your heads, close your eyes with me, and then we'll get out of here this morning. God, thank you so much for today and for these people and for this place and what this community at OCC means, not only to myself and Mackenzie, but to so many that are gathered in this room and even that are reached outside of these walls. God, may we as a people begin to take what we learn in here and utilize it in our everyday life. God, may you make us the kind of people who not only are obsessed with being discipled by those who have gone before us and ultimately by Christ, but that we would also be a people who are making disciples in our communities. And so as we do that today, I just pray a special prayer of blessing over each and every person here. May you keep them safe. May you keep them healthy. As we go about our week, and may we ultimately keep your mission in mind for our lives, and that is to love others well in our community, just as you have loved us. God, it's in your name that we pray, amen. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.